to you all. My name is Leena Marsio, and I work as a senior advisor in the Finnish Heritage Agency. And I've been coordinating the UNESCO Convention on the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage for 6 years now. So have already quite a vast experience on what this convention is about. And I've had the privilege to meet many of you along the way in different parts of the world, which I must say that I dearly miss at the moment, but I'm so glad that we can now get together through these digital technologies. And I also hope that today's workshop will inspire you all to organize something similar in your own country and invite us others to participate. And in this way, we can exchange more and learn from each other. But today's topic is the wheel chart of sustainability and intangible cultural heritage. It is a tool that we developed in Finland 1 year ago together with our fabulous team. And I'm happy to see, is it 4 people from our team present in this meeting? And in a minute, we will tell you more about it with my colleague Antti Huntus from Arts Promotion Centre Finland. But before going to the actual tool and how to use it, and then also we have a real working workshop part of this workshop coming up. So later in the afternoon, we will divide you all into group work. 3 people is in 1 room, so you will get an actual user experience and to see how it actually works. But at this point, I want to welcome you all and thank warmly all the people and all the organizations who have been working with us. So the Arts Promotion Centre Finland, the Futures Research Centre, the Cultural Heritage Education Society in Finland, Finnish Folk Music Institute, and Humap company who was helping out with the wheel chart. Let's go later into the tool, but now I would like to give the floor to Dr. Katriina Siivonen, who can tell a bit more about herself, but she is the chair for the national advisory body under the 2003 convention in Finland, and we've been working together for almost 6 years now. So Katriina will start the session to open up our minds to think more about what sustainable development and intangible cultural heritage actually is.
Thank you, Leena. And to introduce myself, so I am working at the University of Turku in Finland, at the Finland Futures Research Centre, as a university lecturer in future studies. And then I am also at the same university adjunct professor, or as we say in Finland, it might be a familiar word in some other countries also, docent in cultural heritage studies. So I combine futures perspective and heritage studies, and then also sustainability issues in my work and my research. I have done it about maybe 2 decades in some form already in my own research. And also today my perspective is okay, now I could share myself, maybe my screen.
Let's try, Paula, if Katriina shares it, and if there is trouble, then you
yeah,
can
I didn't start yet, but to introduce, yeah. So my perspective today is also this kind of researcher's perspective to this question: what is okay, but now I'm sorry. Now I got this kind of claim that host disabled participant screen sharing, so maybe I cannot do it. Sorry, but Paula, if you still.
I believe Leena can make you a co-host right now. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thanks.
And just to mention, it might be good to close the other cameras at this point, For some who have a weaker connection, it might be easier if we don't have so many cameras on, so we can then open them later in the afternoon. Thank you.
Yes, so I hope you can see now my presentation. This is the
Yes.
first, okay, thanks, first slide. So I will give you a researcher's point of view perspective to this theme, which Leena gave me, sustainable development and intangible cultural heritage. Which kind of connections there might be different between these two spheres of societal activities, actually. And the starting point with sustainable development is firstly, of course, in the recognition of global ecological problems during the 20th century, quite early, already before the Second World War, there was some notions, and then more and more after the war. And at the 1980s, United Nations then established this kind of World Commission on Environment and Development, and Norwegian Prime Minister Gro Harlem Brundtland was leading this commission, and they worked about 4 or 5 years with these questions and published then the famous book Our Common Future, which is published in many languages also, where the term sustainable development was the key concept, and through this publication it got also this kind of global recognition, this concept, and was connected to different kind of political and administrational actions, economic actions also. And the main idea there is this quotation which I have here, which is really often quoted: humanity has the ability to make development sustainable, to ensure that it meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So in other words, maybe it could be said not to overuse our globe on our time, and so behave as human beings in a way that we do not destroy the possibilities of future generations to live on our globe. And in this report, Our Common Future, there was notions about, of course, ecological problems, because a need to do something for to avoid them or mitigate them, and it because it was the starting point of this report, but then also social and economic issues. Culture was not recognized in this report, so people with their cultures and their identities and so far were maybe mentioned as objects of different kind of political and economic actions, but not so much as active or proactive subject who would like to do something for sustainability issues. Culture brings these people and communities in this whole picture, and now then after this report, quite soon already culture issues were also taken into discussion, and I'm looking now today this from the perspective of 3 different forms of cultural sustainability, what it could mean. There is now someone who is would like to come in. Maybe I can help him. Okay, so and yes, maybe I mention first before going to these 3 forms of cultural sustainability that now then after many decades of work with sustainability issues, the current very useful form of sustainability work is defined as these 17 Sustainable Development Goals connected to Agenda 2030, and you can see here these different icons of these 17 goals, and there is also this does not address directly to culture, but culture is in the background of these thoughts, so that the idea is that with culture it is possible to have an impact in sustainability issues, and also then of course with intangible cultural heritage. 3 forms of cultural sustainability. I mentioned that this is the first one of them. It's called Culture in Sustainable Development. My source here is this kind of publication where all of these are presented. It's based on work of European this kind of cost action network funded by European Union. And the name of this network was Investigating Cultural Sustainability. And this network, I was also one member of this, published this kind of book, which is called Culture in, for, and as Sustainability, where these 3 forms are presented. So this first form, Culture in Sustainable Development, defines culture as this kind of 4th pillar or dimension of sustainability. And you can see it is illustrated there with this orange circle. This is quite well established view, and it has been in discussion very soon after this Brundtland's report, Our Common Future. And it means, for instance, culture as art or creative activities, also, of course, then tangible and intangible cultural heritage. And there, according to this view, culture is seen maybe as absolute value, or then more in instrumental form as support for economic or local identities, communities, regions, also nations, and in some cases also natural environments. But the main focus is in these tangible and intangible cultural items as such, in the beginning at least. So it is not so much in human beings nor in nature. Maybe nowadays, when we think about intangible cultural heritage and UNESCO Convention, of course, people and communities are more in picture. But this was the first idea then at the end of 1980s, in the beginning of 1990s, was more about these tangible and intangible cultural items as such, and to protect them or preserve them, safeguard them. Conservation might be also one word which has been used. So a different kind of protection or safeguarding of these issues is the question in culture in sustainable development. Some examples, there is on UNESCO pages quite a lot of different kind of practical examples of these safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage and how it could support different kind of sustainability issues. In this presentation, it is not possible to go through really many different kind of practical examples. So I take this a little bit more on this kind of abstract level, which kind of forms this could be in practice. And for instance, cultural rights is one important concept here. So to keep cultural practices and cultural rights as strong ones and continuing elements of culture is a kind of core idea here. So it means the safeguarding of cultural heritage and it means then different kind of issues in different contexts. So preservation of tangible heritage, for instance, but then also to keep intangible cultural heritage as living heritage, which is living among people and in communities. And in this context, also then the ethical principles of safeguarding intangible cultural heritage are very important. They have been endorsed in 2015 in the meeting of the Intergovernmental Committee of this ICH Convention to protect human rights and avoid disrespect or exploitation or misrepresentation of cultural elements of any communities. And there is also then it emphasized rights of indigenous people. So to safeguard cultural heritage in the form of culture in sustainable development includes these kind of issues which are very important in this ICH Convention. The connection to ecological sustainability from this perspective, culture in sustainable development, is not so clear. This does not support directly ecological sustainability if we think from the perspective of ecology. So there might be, in some cases, even these might be contradictory in the form that cultural sustainability, protection of some forms of culture might be harmful for ecological sustainability. This is now this kind of invited example. I do not know exactly if there anywhere exists this kind of protection of, for instance, hunting, where it is actually hunting of endangered species. So this kind of example could be in conflict with ecological sustainability. So it is not evidence that safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage would be sustainable in ecological way. But of course, safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage might support also ecological sustainability, or then just be neutral from the perspective of it. But then it is also possible to think that safeguarding of ICH could support communities to be more resilient, for instance, and it could support cultural diversity, which could support resilience, and it could ICH can support identities, so that people could be stronger, and then they are more able to support ecological sustainability. And I think this is actually quite important perspective, because without this kind of strength in communities, ecological sustainability or support to it might not be possible at all. And then, of course, there is this kind of examples where safeguarding of, for instance, local biodiversity is quite evident more directly when we are safeguarding some forms of intangible cultural heritage, for instance, pastorage of special cultural landscapes, and these kind of examples are quite good ones of this. Then the second form of cultural sustainability is culture for sustainable development, and actually I think that this is not so important for ICH, at least in my interpretation, than this culture in sustainability. But there, according to this view, culture is this kind of mediator between different kind of other dimensions of sustainability. So the kind of could interpret human action between human understanding and nature, for instance, the concept of ecosystem services and these kind of terms, how to explain for people that nature is important, belongs to this category. And here, for instance, then the question could be about the ecological footprint of for instance, different kind of cultural events, festivals and so, or cultural institutions like museums or cultural organizations. So how they are managed from the perspective of ecological sustainability. And then it's possible to think, for instance, the ability of art, of heritage to catch people's attention to ecological crises, to notice by cultural means that there is something which is important. For instance, as an exhibition in a museum, for instance, of extinction of some species or some other ecological problems which are where humans has caused these problems. So this kind of awakening awareness of ecological problems is one example of this. But then I take here now this kind of more futures perspective, some megatrends, and ecological crisis is quite important, strong megatrend currently. Also interconnectedness and mobility of people and information is another one, and radical new technology, and all of these three, of course, together also are changing quite heavily our world currently, and there is then quite many problems. There might be also new and inspiring and important issues which are raising from these, but ecological crisis, if we think sustainability issues, is a really strong megatrend, and we must be able to do something for it. And there is also research which tells that culture is actually quite important for this, because the basic question is how we as human beings understand nature and human nature interface, and how we are thus then acting in the world. So it is actually sustainability issue can be seen basically as a cultural issue, and how to change culture in a way that we could mitigate these ecological problems. And for this, then this third form of cultural sustainability is quite important, culture as sustainable development, where the idea is that culture takes this kind of new holistic and transformative role as a process. And you can see that this figure, how to figure out this, the culture includes all of these other three dimensions of sustainability, and culture is also, with these arrows, shows that it is seen as a process where we are processing and transforming culture in another form, which could then be more sustainable from an ecological point of view, but then also at the same time from cultural, social, and economic perspective. So this kind of new kind of welfare where we understand differently what actually sustainability means. And then I have here as other source an article by Nancy Duxbury, Anita Kangas, and Christian de Beukelaar in the International Journal of Cultural Policy from 2017, where they analyzed these different forms of cultural sustainability, and this transformative form, this culture as sustainable development, their interpretation is that there is not so many examples of this, at least yet. And it is because these problems are global, and actually then we would need global actions and kind of ecological citizenship, which this is their term in this article, which they use. And it is quite difficult to realize, to implement this kind of concept, because cultural policy usually is national or inside countries, inside states. So it is in practice more difficult to implement this kind of form of cultural sustainability. But what if we would have some, if it could be reality in some form, it could be culture as this kind of global, interactive, transformative process with value-based futures consciousness towards ecological sustainability, and then on the same time to human, social, and cultural well-being in a new form. So this is the ideal form of this, but there is not so much examples of this. And how I see then from the perspective of my own research, I would like to emphasize here also that it is really necessary to include here the right of every individual to participate in the definition of this kind of cultural transformation of one's own culture together with other people. So cultural rights and human rights in this form, I think, should be included in this kind of transformative process if we try to put this forward. So then some possibilities how to implement this kind of form, cultural sustainability, culture as sustainability is the term heritage futures. There is different definitions of heritage futures in this kind of international discussion of cultural heritage and heritage issues, but it can be defined. One form is that it can be defined as intangible cultural heritage, including value-based futures consciousness towards ecological sustainability, and then it requires new kind of this kind of human nature relationship connected to new kinds of skills and practices. And as we know, skills and practices, worldviews are the core elements of intangible cultural heritage. So the question is how to change our skills and practices to be more sustainable. Now, I suppose I can share you these slides, or this will be recorded also, this presentation. So you will have this link which I have there. If you are interested, you could see one possible example about how to try to create this kind of transformative or possibilities to cultural transformation towards sustainability. It is a new project which in my leadership we started in August in practice this year. So and the name is Dynamic Museum. So to define museums in a new form and heritage futures workshop as instruments for ecological reconstruction. Quite small project, but I think important in a way that we now are trying to have this kind of experiments. How could we in practice support culture as sustainability?
Thank you, Katriina. You could also share the link in the chat box. So.
Okay, yes, I could do it. And this is then my references if you would like to see how I have built my presentation. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Katriina, for these opening words. I think it's a very, very good warm-up for our session today. There are a couple of questions for you on the chat box, so maybe you will quickly have a look at them, and we will now go forward in the program because Aura Seikkula from the Arts Promotion Centre, who's been working with our wheel chart and is also writing her own PhD on sustainable development. So Aura will give you a 5-minute short commentary on both to Katriina, but also from her own point of view. And after that, Matti Hakamäki is prepared to have a short presentation.
Yes, thank you, Leena. And obviously, thank you so much, Katriina. My thinking is very close to, very similar to Katriina's. And I would have to say that I approach this question now more as a cultural and art worker, and then secondary as a researcher myself. I wrote a little statement, 2 minutes, and I'll read it through for you. So, yes. The prevailing climate crisis is not a single massive event, but rather a combination of international challenges and problems that entail identification and recognition in order to be able to reach for needed solutions and expertise. What makes climate crisis so debated is something theoretician Timothy Morton calls as a hyper-object. That is a conceptual fact so large and complex that it can never be properly comprehended. As noted by Katriina Siivonen in her fascinating presentation, bearing the idea of fulfillment or welfare, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations Agenda 2030 are built upon the four-pillar definition of sustainability, encompassing notions, environmental, economic, social, and cultural dimensions. The actual notion and principles of sustainability aim to balance and mediate between these pillars. A key feature of the SDGs is that their development objectives and targets are interdependent but interlinked. It is argued that the SDGs entail complementaries or synergies as well as trade-offs or tensions which have implications for global and national contexts. However, the role of culture remains limited within these 17 SDGs. It could be considered whether culture's absence is historically rooted in sustainable development and cultural policy debates where advocacy, policy, and academia neglect all-encompassing eco-cultural perspectives on the roles of cultural policy. Katriina presented three forms of cultural sustainability. In the first representation, culture in sustainability, development processes contribute to the achievement of establishing and recognizing cultural diversity. This implies conservation, maintenance, and preservation of tangible and intangible culture and the diversity of cultural expressions. In the second representation, culture for sustainability, culture is seen as a resource for development and means to conceptualize, regulate, and shape development processes. By transferring development endeavors onto cultural context, they are translated in a culture-specific way to local conditions. The third, culture as sustainability representation, refers to a fundamental paradigm shift in which development as such is considered to be a cultural process. Here, sustainability is no longer seen as a set of options that can be chosen or denied, or which can be integrated or not, but it becomes a fundamental, transformative part of a culturally embedded development paradigm that is largely shared among policymakers, individuals, public and private institutions, initiatives, and so on. So, in my opinion, sustainability is principally cultural by being contextual, historically, and geographically actual. Human action is cultural and contextual. Cultural sustainability means both creativity and cultural diversity, as well as cultural heritage and all human knowledge. The concept has gained meaning covering all humanity. Cultural sustainability merges with social sustainability to ensure the fair treatment of people and the well-being of all generations. In terms of preserving and supporting cultural heritage, cultural sustainability also encompasses an ecological dimension of sustainability. Culture appears and is understandable through narrative organization, and cultural sustainability can also emerge as a transformative process created through narratives that connect the past with the future and the local with the global. Agreeing with these representations that are used as structuring principles for exploring the complexity of the cultural sustainable interface, I consider sustainability as an ever-evolving cultural continuum in which future opportunities are subordinate to sustainability's ecological, social, and economic constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Aura, for your valuable commentary. I'm really glad we've been able to have you as part of the team and also bring these important views to our webinar today. Katriina, would you like to quite quickly reply to one or two questions coming from the chat before giving the floor to Matti?
Yes, I now did not have time to read all of these, but there was about this radical new technology, what it means. It is, for instance, digitalization, but robotization, artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, this kind of issues which have quite heavy impact in our everyday life also, and in the future. So it already changed that we are using now this technology here also. So it uses our ways to interact with each other, and many different issues, how which kind of practices we will have, and of course then it has impact also to our understanding of world, and how we our practices, and then to also to intangible cultural heritage, how we do different kind of issues in this Ice Age world also. Inspiring concrete examples where Ice Age supports ecological sustainability. So actually how I understand this is that these existing examples are quite local so far. So they might be, which I said also, for instance, pasturage of in some region, to have sheep in some cultural landscape and to keep the biodiversity of this local ecological spot as diverse as possible. But this kind of more deeply going examples, which goes to this how our understanding of the world and the human nature relationship. If you know these kind of examples, I would be really interested, but I have not found this kind of examples. So even though these ecological problems are really global ones, for instance, climate change, so our local actions by, for instance, driving car locally has global impacts, but we do not have this kind of examples of Ice Age where we could have some kind of change in this kind of understanding of world and this kind of practices. So I think this is, it could be stronger, but I don't know yet how.
Okay, Katriina.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And I promise you there will be room for questions in your workshops, though you don't know yet, or we don't know yet who will be your companions in the room. So feel free to ask more questions there and also contact us afterwards. Yeah. But now from theory and from philosophy, we will go into a more concrete level. And our next presenter is Matti Hakamäki, working for the Finnish Folk Music Institute and also the first accredited NGO from Finland, part of the UNESCO convention. Also to mention, we had a second accredited NGO, Taitoliitto Crafts Finland. Welcome also to Kikka, who is part of our event today. But I will give the floor now for 5 minutes for Matti to tell a bit about what does sustainability actually mean from the perspective of an NGO.
Thank you very much, and hello to all. It's very nice to see you, old friends and new friends now. And thank you, Katriina and Aura, also for your presentations. I will so briefly talk about sustainable development from the point of view of NGOs and maybe community involvement. So my name is Matti Hakamäki. I'm director of Finnish Folk Music Institute. We have been going on for 40 years. We work to promote Finnish folk music and the practicing of Finnish folk music. And we do it nationwide in every part of Finland, actually. And the recent years, maybe let's say from 3 to 8 years, we have been more and more being introduced to the ideas of sustainable development and then intangible cultural heritage, and also with the new ideas of community involvement, which has come from these conventions or these ideas. And this has had a very, very big impact in our work. And I will maybe tell you a few examples, concrete ones, what kind of things we have learned and what kind of things we have done in the recent years. But first, Folk Music Institute, we make albums, records, CDs, books. We work with education, with the children education, with university, with all levels of education of Finnish folk music and also folk dance. And we have a big archive, mainly contemporary folk music archive. It's from the last 50 years. We record every year, mainly from the Kaustinen Folk Music Festival, pretty much audio and video. So we also work with the archives. We have library, and then we have a museum, Finnish Folk Instrument Museum also. So we work on many different levels, but with everything we work to promote Finnish folk music and practicing of Finnish folk music. And nowadays, actually, we have been working more and more with the other domains also because of this accreditation to the convention of the UNESCO convention. And also we are very much eager to learn about the safeguarding intangible cultural heritage and folk music traditions, of course. And we have found out that it's a very effective way to learn is to meet other domains and meet other elements and see how the things are done there. So maybe one thing I want to point out here with the Intangible Cultural Heritage Convention of UNESCO, which has been very important for us, is the idea about the community involvement, and actually the idea that the expert level is actually not that important anymore, and we should address all our safeguarding actions so that we also take into account the community level. And this means that we go to the practitioners, we go to the people who actually do and practice their traditions, and we ask their ideas, and we build our safeguarding plans, and we build our work from that ideology. And this has been like the main point for us to understand. And a few practical things I will point out that we have done with this work, maybe 2-3 years now, that we have trying to understand all the work we have done before and what we are doing now from the perspective of community involvement and intangible cultural heritage. And for example, at the Kaustinen Folk Music Festival, we record every year about 100 hours audio and 20-30 hours of video recordings to our archive to preserve the folk music traditions to the next generations. And with that work, we have found out that actually we haven't done that much community involvement, and we haven't asked the ideas of the practitioners, how they want them to be recorded, what kind of things we should put into the archives. Of course, there are some elements we have done for many decades actually, but there is still a lot of things to come. And this is something that we have found out to be very important with our archive work, with our recording work. Another example with the publications we are doing, we have done then actually we have been doing publications also on many levels. So some of them are more academic publications, and some of them are kind of like notebooks just for the practitioners. And this is also has been the kind of the field that we have been thinking about the community involvement, so that we actually get the practitioners to join to make the publications. And this is what we have done now the recent years, that we have had one player from the Finnish folk music and have a notebook, like a music sheet book of that player, and then involve the practitioners who like to play that same style, and kind of give this ICH idea to this publication work. And this is, I think this has also been a very good experience for us. But also with this, we are just taking the first steps. And then also with the museum work, we have a small exhibition here, and we have just renewed the exhibition. Actually, it will be ready next summer, but already we have done the main part of it, and it has been done through community involvement, so that the practitioners actually have been designing with us the exhibition. So this kind of work, just to give you maybe examples in your own work, in your own NGO's work, in your own safeguarding work. And these are the kind of examples or the actions where you can also very effectively use this tool. So this, of course, I'm very happy that I had the chance to be in this working group making this tool, but this has been this kind of these questions and the ideas behind this tool have been very important for us in this work that we have done for the 2-3 years now. And all these questions have been many times asked from different points of views, from the archive point of view, also not only from different elements, but also from from the NGO side, like what kind of what kind of work NGOs do. If we have an archive or a folk music orchestra, we can also use the same questions to make that safeguarding work better. Yes, I could talk for more, but I will leave it here. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a lot, Matti. Really nice to have your insight as an NGO, and I know you do such good work there in the Folk Music Institute and Kaustinen.